Good evening. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Dogen Zenji's BeingTime and Albert Einstein's SpaceTime. So, physics and Zen metaphysics. But the first thing I want to say right off the bat is that I'm not a physicist. In fact, I could probably even confess that I'm not really very good at math. And I'm also not a Dogen scholar, because that takes a lot of effort too. What I am is a Zen practitioner with an amateur interest in physics. Some of you here probably know more about both of these subjects than I do. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say about that at the end of the talk. But for the time being, I'd appreciate it if you could just bear with me. I do appreciate it. So first we're going to read through an abridged version of Uji, or BeingTime, by Dogen, which is a piece of writing contained in Dogen's Shobogenzo, which is a large collection of writings from the 9th century founder of Soto Zen Buddhism in Japan, which is the tradition of Zen Buddhism that we follow at Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. I'm using this abridged version because just us reading through the whole thing, if as it stands, like the whole entire thing, would take up all our time tonight, so I'm not going to do that. But I think this version kind of gets across the most important points of what the piece has to say. So then I'm going to lead us in an experimental meditation practice, which focuses on time. I hope you find that fun and interesting and maybe a little challenging. And it might help to clarify some of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Then I'm going to be talking about Dogen's BeingTime and Einstein's SpaceTime in sort of a general way. And I'm going to be attempting to connect the two concepts together overall. I'm not going to be going into anything very specific tonight, because in my next two talks, I'm going to go through the whole piece line by line, and we can kind of get into some of those more specific concepts and kind of expand on what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So a couple of other things I want to mention before starting is that I think it's really important to not flatly state that the science here is exactly the same as the Zen philosophy, because I think it's kind of dangerous to make an assumption like that. They do, in fact, differ in important respects, which we'll probably be getting to eventually. But I find it very inspiring, to me at least, that there appears to be at least some scientific basis for what we do in Zen practice, and it appears there's some room for Zen philosophy and science as well. So I've gotten most of what I'll be discussing here tonight from these two books. This is Brian Greene's The Fabric of the Cosmos, and this is BeingTime by Shinsu Roberts. Brian Greene is a particle physicist, primarily known for his work on string theory, and Shinsu Roberts is a Zen priest, and she's written a very extensive book on this piece of literature. So I've got links to these books, or the information on these books, as well as some links to some YouTube videos. And there's a YouTube channel called PBS SpaceTime, which is hosted by an astrophysicist named Matt O'Dowd. And I got a lot of my inspiration for what I'm talking about tonight from these short, they're like little 15-minute videos that I think are extremely interesting, especially in regards to our practice. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, there's in the chat, I put in the chat the links to those videos. So first thing we're going to do is go through this version of BeingTime that I'll be talking about. First I want to just read through this, without too much explanation. I mean, you can read along with me. I'm going to be putting it up on screen share. Or you can just listen, but don't get too hung up on things in the text that you don't understand. I think one of the reasons why Dogen's writing can be very challenging is that he has a tendency to use a lot of archaic metaphors and symbolism that need to be explained in more modern terms to make sense. So the ones I want to go through right now, just so you know when this comes up in the writing, what these are about, is right at the beginning. You have these three that he talks about beings with 3 heads and 8 arms, and an 8 or 16-foot body, and this refers to specifically the 3 heads and 8 armed being is the demon of delusion, and the 8 or 16-foot body is just one of the ways that they describe the body of the Buddha. So it's a demon of delusion or the Buddha. The second is the staff and the whisk, which are symbols of a teacher, or a pillar and a lantern, which are symbolize the monastery where you'd be studying. So that's like the teacher and the student. The third one is the sons of Zhang and Li, and that's contrasted against the earth and the stars. And what this basically means is common everyday people. It's kind of like saying every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and the great vast mystery of the universe. So it's like every common person plus everything in the universe. Later on in the writing, he mentions Qing Yuan, Huang Bo, Zhang Zi, and Shi Tu, and these are all Chinese Zen masters of the 8th to 9th centuries. So they're just people that are, advanced teachers. So now I'm going to start screen sharing here. Can you guys all see that? All right. So I'm going to just start reading here. An ancient Buddha said, "For the time being, stand on top of the highest peak. For the time being, proceed along the bottom of the deepest ocean. For the time being, 3 heads and 8 arms. For the time being, an 8 or 16-foot body. For the time being, a staff or whisk. For the time being, a pillar or lantern. For the time being, the sons of Zhang and Li. For the time being, the earth and sky." For the time being here means time itself is being, and all being is time. A golden 16-foot body is time. Because it is time, there is the radiant illumination of time. Study it as the 12 hours of the present. 3 heads and 8 arms is time. Because it is time, it is not separate from the 12 hours of the present. Know that in this way there are myriads of forms and hundreds of grasses throughout the entire earth, and yet each grass and each form itself is the entire earth. The study of this is the beginning of practice. When you are at this place, there is just one grass, there is just one form. There is understanding of form and no understanding of form. There is understanding of grass and no understanding of grass. Since there is nothing but this moment, the time being is all the time there is. Grass being, form being are both time. Each moment is all being, is the entire world. Reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. Yet an ordinary person who does not understand Buddha Dharma may hear the words, "the time being," this way. For a while I was 3 heads and 8 arms. For a while I was an 8 or 16-foot body. This is like having crossed over rivers and climbed mountains. Even though the mountains and rivers still exist, I have already passed them now and reside in the Jewel Palace and Vermilion Tower. Those mountains and rivers are as distant from me as heaven is from earth. It is not that simple. At the time the mountains were climbed and the rivers crossed, you were present. Time is not separate from you, and as you are present, time does not go away. As time is not marked by coming and going, the moment you climb the mountains is the time being right now. If time keeps coming and going, you are the time being right now. This is the meaning of the time being. Does this time being not swallow up the moment when you climbed the mountains and the moment when you resided in the Jewel Palace and Vermilion Tower? Does it not spit them out? Do not think that time merely flies away. Do not see flying away as the only function of time. If time merely flies away, you would be separated from time. The reason you do not clearly understand the time being is that you think of time only as passing. In essence, all things in the entire world are linked with one another as moments. Because all moments are the time being, they are your time being. The time being has the quality of flowing. So-called today flows into tomorrow. Today flows into yesterday. Yesterday flows into today. And today flows into today. Tomorrow flows into tomorrow. Because flowing is a quality of time, moments of past and present do not overlap or line up side by side. Qing Yuan is time. Huang Bo is time. Zhang Zi is time. Shito is time. Because self and other are already time. Practice enlightenment is time. Being splattered with mud and getting wet with water is also time. Just actualize all time as all being. There is nothing extra. A so-called extra being is thoroughly an extra being. Thus, the time being half actualized is half of the time being completely actualized. And a moment that seems to be missed is also completely being. In the same way, even the moment before or after the moment that appears to be missed is also complete in itself, the time being. Vigorously abiding in each moment is the time being. Do not mistakenly confuse it as non-being. Do not forcefully assert it as being. Mountains are time, oceans are time. If they were not time, there would be no mountains or oceans. Do not think that mountains and oceans here and now are not time. If time is annihilated, mountains and oceans are annihilated. As time is not annihilated, mountains and oceans are not annihilated. This being so, the morning star appears, the Tathagata appears, the eye appears, and raising a flower appears. Each is time. If it were not time, it could not be thus. So, now what I'd like to do is a little meditation practice. Usually when we start a meditation practice, we focus on the breath. And that's a good thing for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons that we don't usually emphasize is its connection to time. So usually when we focus on the breath, we either just focus on the breath or focus on the breath and count the breath. We count each cycle of the breath. So you inhale, count 1 to yourself and exhale. Inhale, count 2 and exhale. And so on. Well, what I'd like to suggest for this little bit of time here that we have is that we instead of doing each breath cycle and counting, I would suggest inhale, count 1, exhale, then just inhale and exhale without counting. Then the next cycle, inhale, count 2, and exhale, and so on. And do that until you get to 5, and then repeat. Does everybody understand what I just said there? Get it? All right, so let's get in a comfortable position. Now just turn your attention to the sensation of breath in your body. And when you're comfortable with that, just start the practice. So inhale, count 1, exhale. Inhale, and exhale. Inhale, count 2, and exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, count 3, exhale. Inhale, exhale, and so on. Now just return to regular breathing. Just come back to the present moment. So, if you're like me, you might notice when you're doing this exercise that during the pause cycle, when you're not counting your breath, you can see how your mind is anticipating the next number that you're going to be counting. And at the same time, your memory of the last count, cycle that you counted, is being overwritten by your present moment. So in this way, we can kind of come to an understanding of our moment here, our present, and our past, and our future. So it might take some practice to get that down, but I think it's really helpful. So, experiment with this kind of thing. One thing that's great about Buddhist practice is we don't say that you should take it just because I said so. You can have your own experience. Play around with it. See if it's true. See if what I'm saying is true. So Dogen writes in BeingTime For the time being means time itself is being and all being is time. Dogen is, I think, writing about the experience of being. And Shinsu Roberts in her book explains that we can't understand what Dogen is saying without understanding his idea of what he calls a Dharma position, which is a moment, a thing, or an event which is impermanent, but because everything is connected, nothing really begins or ends. For Dogen, a linear view of time as starting and ending is problematic for Buddhist practice. Now, Einstein's breakthrough in physics was his realization that reality is based on 4 dimensions: the XYZ axis of space plus the dimension of time. I'm going to screen share a little diagram here. Does everyone see that? You guys all see that?
Yes, we can.
So this is the block universe. So you can see that all experience within space-time is based on the relative position of now within this 4-dimensional space. So physicists call this view of space-time outside of this block as the view from no-when. So this is, in this kind of thought experiment, you can view the whole of space-time as a kind of loaf of bread. And depending on where you are, you slice the loaf in respect to your relative position. In this way, each slice of the block represents one moment encompassing all of the universe. So everything that's happening in the universe within that slice. Dogen says, having crossed over rivers and mountains, I have already passed them, and they are as distant from me as heaven from earth. But it's not that simple. When you cross the rivers and mountains, you are present. Time is not separate from you. Now, in terms of this block view of reality, everything has happened, is happening, and will happen. The only thing that's separating this moment from your past and your future is your inability to see this view from no-when. Dogen writes, all things are linked with one another as moments. All moments are the time being. They are your time being. We could say that all things linked together as moments is similar to saying all space and everything in it are linked together with time. And all moments being your time, being as similar to the relative observer in the block universe, experiencing all of being from their own relative position. It seems kind of simple that in one sense you could just replace the word space here with being. The view of physics, and then they both seem to be talking about the same thing, the view from no-when or the block universe. So being time could be the same thing as this. When Dogen says being, he really means being in the sense of the experience of existence, and the concept of space-time is a bit more objective than that. So in Dogen's view, what he's really talking about is human experience. What science is talking about is objective reality. And all kinds of odd anomalies can occur as a result of the difference between relative observers within space-time. We all know stories about how movement and gravity curve time. So in other words, time is affected by both gravity and motion. which is how you use like the thought experiment about the twins in the faster than light spacecraft. Two twins, one goes off in a spacecraft going faster than light and comes back, and their twin on the Earth is aged more than they have. So time is experienced differently by different viewers based on the relative motion and gravity. But Dogen is very much focused here on convincing us that there is really only one thing, one being, time, and that realizing that is a key component of Zen practice. He writes, "Know that in this way there are myriads of forms and myriads and hundreds of grasses throughout the entire earth, and yet each grass and each form is the entire earth. The study of this is the beginning of practice." So often in older Asian writing, when they refer to the whole world or the entire earth, what they're trying to express is the entire universe. It's just that the universe at that time was only what was known. And all that was known was this world, this earth, and the sky and the stars. Dogen writes, "Just actualize all time as all being. There's nothing extra." The word actualize means to make real, turn into action or fact. So when we need to make this true, we need to make this idea somehow not just theoretical. We need to act in the world with the conviction that it is so. Science with its methodologies has proved over and over again that time and space are one, so why not being in time? Dogen writes, "Mountains are time, oceans are time. If they were not time, there would be no mountains or oceans. Do not think that mountains and oceans here and now are not time. And don't think that you yourself are not time. We're all traveling through time. Even if you were to be able to be somewhere in the vast reaches of outer space and be completely motionless, you'd still be traveling through time. So we're all time travelers." And that's what I say about that for tonight, and we'll get into some more specifics on the next two talks. So, look forward to hearing what you guys want to have to say about this.